Hey everybody, welcome in to The Point. We're doing well on this beautiful Wednesday evening, August the 14th. Somehow the month is almost half over, and we have a lot to dive into tonight, a variety of different topics around the world of sports. And, a lot of different places that we can start. But I want to start with hockey, the NHL, because a lot's been happening over the last couple of days. And to really start this, because there's a really interesting story with the St. Louis Blues and the Edmonton Oilers, which I find a lot more fascinating than the story I'm going to start with. It has a lot more impact, quite frankly. On Monday, Darren Dreger reported that the Toronto Maple Leafs would be changing captains going into the 2025 season, 2024-2025 season, replacing Austin Matthews with John Tavares. John Tavares had been the captain for 5 years. He's the guy who left Long Island to join the Maple Leafs. He wore the pajamas, beloved by everybody. Not exactly captain personality, but represented the team in a great way for the last 5 years. However, the Maple Leafs have won one playoff round in the 5 years that John Tavares has been captain. His play has dropped off year over year. He is basically a third-line center at this point, and I think the team saw Austin Matthews, the best goal scorer in the game right now, one of the best players in the world, and they said, you know what, it's time to pass the torch. It's time to make Austin Matthews our captain, not to mention Austin signed his extension, so they know he's going to be here for a long time. It's not as if you're waiting for him to sign a long-term deal. You have him under contract, so you have that stability, so you don't look like you have egg on your face if you name him captain and he walks out the back door to go to somewhere else, LA, let's just say, now that Arizona is no longer a possibility for the Phoenix native. Now, this is a big deal to Leafs fans. And that's really it. It's a big deal to Leafs fans, Sportsnet, TSN, and people that pump out Leafs content. In the grand scheme of things, let's just be completely upfront and honest about what's happening. Austin Matthews was on the Maple Leafs the last number of years with John Tavares. He wore a letter. He was part of the leadership core. He was the best player on the team during every one of those years, as he remains today. He could have been great in the playoffs. He was not, just like John Tavares wasn't, just like Mitch Marner wasn't. You can go through the list, the whole team. Basically, you're saying Matthews is younger. He's better than Tavares right now. We're not going to ask Tavares to waive his no move. We're not going to buy him out because we don't have the courage to do that. We know it'll piss people off, and it's a radical thing to do. So we can't ask him to do that. So we're going to strip him of the captaincy and maybe force him, God forbid, to play wing this season. That's the extent of what the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to do when it comes to off-season moves. Because they signed Ekman Larson, you bring in bigger defense, and Ilya Samsonov goes to Vegas, and other players go different places. But it's the same team coming back. The same core group, but a new head coach, which you can spin, which they will. And now that you have a new team captain, a new direction, a new way of thinking, which is, let's be honest here, it's complete bullshit. If John Tavares is a loser because he was the captain of the team, then Austin Matthews is just as big a loser because he was on the team the last number of years, winning just as much as John did. A really good regular season team that comes up flat in the playoffs. And that's not being harsh, that's just the truth. But this doesn't change a thing to me. It's a team that's never gotten close to winning. It's a team that the odds makers and media have labeled as a Stanley Cup contender, but yet they've never been a Stanley Cup contender since Matthews was drafted. Fact. They've gotten to the second round once, winning one game in the second round. And if you get to a second round, you lose in 5 games, you are not a Stanley Cup contender. Fact. Is he one of the best players in the world? Yes. Does this change the status of the team? Does this change what people should feel about the Toronto Maple Leafs? Absolutely not. It's putting lipstick on a pig. Because Craig Berube is a Stanley Cup winning head coach, and you can say he can turn our band of losers into a bunch of winners, which we'll see. Is it going to happen this year? No. Spoiler alert. I think the Leafs are worse on paper than they were going into last year, and I think their defense still has problems. But we'll get to that when we get closer to the season. But this is it's a farce. It's changing deck chairs when Austin Matthews has been on board the Titanic the entire time. He's not a new person here. If you're writing a show and you've gone 2 seasons in and your shows get shitty ratings, it's somehow still on the air, and you hire somebody who was working on the project to become head writer, I don't think it's going to become that much better. Because he's been there the whole time. Why isn't he pitching new ideas? Why isn't he doing things to try to help out this failing enterprise? John Tavares is not known for speaking, not known for being a voice. You're telling me Austin Matthews couldn't have jumped in and given a rah-rah speech, couldn't have jumped in and told Nylander or Marner, who he's all buddies with, to, I don't know, play harder, show up in the playoffs, be available, not go down with suspicious injuries? The Maple Leafs will be a good regular season team again because they always are. And that's if John Tavares was captain or Austin Matthews was captain. This changes nothing. They remain a team that are not threatening. That, to me, are not a Stanley Cup contender still. A team that's going to have to change drastically if they're going to be a Stanley Cup contender. A team that has not had a number 1 defenseman in over 20 years. Longer than that, 30 years. A team that's relying on a guy to be a number 1 goalie when every big game he somehow comes up with a new injury. This team has a lot of ifs. They're not better than Florida. Florida lost a lot of players. A lot of players this offseason. They're not better than Florida. Are they better than Tampa? I don't know. You can make an argument they are. I think Tampa's all right. Teams are getting better around them. Some good teams in the Metropolitan Division at the top of it. So, to me, this is great. If you're a Maple Leafs fan and you really want to buy a new jersey, then they got you. Hook, line, and sinker. You'll go to the shop and you'll buy a new Austin Matthews C jersey and bully for you. Great. Happy that you got the memorabilia. When it comes to overall team chemistry, when it comes to winning, which is what sports is to me, that's why I don't celebrate silver and bronze medals, because it's not, okay, great, you lost. No difference between finishing 2nd and 18th, if you ask me. There really isn't. But if you really were so clamored to have Austin Matthews as the captain, you got your wish. And he is. So enjoy. But does this change anything about the team? Does this change anything about the outlook going into the season? Not a thing. And if you believe that it does, then the Maple Leafs have you by the short and curlies, and you are their favorite customer because you will buy any bullshit that they will put in front of you. You are the perfect sale. Every business wants you because you are willing to just take everything as fact when more often than not, it's fiction. But congrats to Matthews. I'm sure it's a proud day for him and his family, as it should be. I'm not going to be the guy to talk about the history of the team and how it's great about the captaincy and this and that crap. I really don't care. That's more for, there's lots of other places, fans and the fanboys in the media that I'm sure are doing that over the last couple of days. And the significance of the organization and blah, 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 don't care. I'm getting down to brass tacks and what this means for winning, because that's what sports are all about to me anyway. Also this week, this is far more interesting, this story. Also on Monday, the St. Louis Blues reacquired 2 draft picks from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and in turn then signed Edmonton players Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway to offer sheets. Broberg's 2 years, $4.58 million, which if it's not matched by the Oilers, a second round pick will be going to the Edmonton Oilers. Dylan Holloway, 2.29, third rounder, if not matched. These are both 2-year deals, respectively, to Philip Broberg and to Dylan Holloway. Edmonton's had a good offseason, other than the bad PR by hiring Stan Bowman. The woke police did not like that. Other than that minor blip, I like the Jeff Skinner ad. I like that they kept downtown Connor Brown. I like that they kept their team together. Matthias Janmark, cheap deal, kept Adam Henrique. They are one of the best teams in the league entering 2024-2025, and they will be a favorite to win Lord Stanley come June of 2025. These 2 young players, RFAs, you're trying to get deals done. Philip Broberg, Holloway, both young players that you drafted that have promise, that could have great futures in the NHL. We saw Philip Broberg, play in the postseason towards the end of it, replacing Vinny Desharnais. And I think the Oilers view him as part of their future, if not the present. Here's what I think is going to happen, and here's what I think should happen. I think the Oilers are going to sign both of these players. I think they're going to match both offer sheets. Because this price for that young talent is not crazy. Both players are valuable. We'll get to the more valuable one in a second. But you need depth at the bottom of your lineup. You need guys to kind of push through, play better, be better than their salary. And I think these 2 guys are potentially 2 people that could do it, that could have that type of an impact. And I don't think the Oilers want to lose them. It's hard to make trades. They are very pressed up against the salary cap. They've kept a lot of their own guys, partly because not a lot of great players hit free agency, but also you just had a team that went to a Stanley Cup final. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. Sure, you had Jeff Skinner because he's bought out and he's cheap, and you hope that he can bring value to your team. But also sounds like Evander Kane's going to start the year on LTIR. He might not play next year, so you can fit both of these guys in your salary, figure out Evander Kane at a later date. If you have to trade him and include a sweetener to a team, you do it. Here's what I would do. I am matching Philip Broberg. I think that's done already. I'm matching Philip Broberg without question. Defense is far more important than a random winger on your team. Philip Broberg is 23 years old. He's just getting started. He's played 81 NHL games, and last year he had to play a bunch in the American League. He had 38 points in 49 games in the American League. Played 2 playoff games for the Oilers. Both were in the Stanley Cup final. He can skate. He's got a good shot. I think he's got good hockey sense. It was smart to send him down to the American League last year. He got some reps. He came back and looked like a better player. Looked like a more controlled, more comfortable, more confident player. And he can just do a lot of different things. You like Darnell Nurse on your team. They have a decent defense. Kulak and Cece are both guys that play the part, but I think Broberg, it won't take much, and I think he'll be better than both of those defensemen by mid-season this year. I think he's got that much talent, that much upside. He's not like a guy that gets injured constantly. He could be a bargain at a little under $5 million really quickly. Because when defensemen find it, they find it. Look at Rasmus Dahlin. Look at Owen Power in Buffalo. Just use a couple of... Philip Broberg was a high pick. Philip Broberg is unique. He can do a lot of different things. The Oilers lost Vinny Desharnais in free agency to Vancouver. They let him go, I think, because they looked at Broberg and go, he's going to be playing regular minutes next year for our team. He's a every night type of guy, Philip Broberg. He's in our top 6, which I think he will be. He's the future. He's part of the future of the team. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he's a fantastic talent, and that's an easy match when it comes to Philip Broberg. If I'm the Oilers, I let Dylan Holloway go. And Dylan Holloway's a decent player. To find wingers. I expect the Edmonton Oilers to be a team that's aggressive at the trade deadline, hoping to add talent. He could be a trade chip potentially, but that's almost $3 million that you're going to have to find space for. And it's not that easy to do in the modern NHL to just make up that space to find room for a player. So Dylan Holloway can go for me. Good player. Maybe he'll be great in St. Louis with a new opportunity, fresh team. But I would let him go. I think Oilers will match both offer sheets. Broberg's a lock. No way they're letting him go. It'll be tricky with money, but they will make it work. You can be creative. Use the cap to your advantage. But I like it by St. Louis. St. Louis has the money. St. Louis is in this weird position where they want to be competitive because they kind of still have an older team, but they have made the playoffs in a couple years. And you see Robert Thomas and you see Jordan Kyrou and you see Colton Parayko and you go, what are we doing here? Jordan Binnington's still on the team with a big cap hit. So you're sitting kind of looking around going, who are we? What's our direction? What are our goals as a team? And I think this kind of tells you that they're hoping to acquire young talent to help this team improve a little more rapidly than maybe most of us thought. I thought St. Louis would be a team that kind of going through a rebuild, maybe similar to what the Rangers did a few years ago, and then in quick order, you are back being competitive again, being one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. But they're trying to acquire talent. They offloaded some pieces this summer that weren't really helping the team, that were old, that were long in the tooth, like a Kevin Hayes going to St. Louis. So Kevin Hayes going to Pittsburgh from St. Louis. So I like it from the Blues. If a player's out there, use the offer sheet. It's not a bad thing. It's a tool at your disposal. And the GMs that don't use it, quite frankly, are just cowards. Oh, you can't break the fabric of the game. It goes against the rules. No, it doesn't, because the rule says you can use the offer sheet. So use it. But I like the Blues. Doug Armstrong, Alex Steen, what they're doing there, the new management core in St. Louis, being creative and trying to improve their team late into the summer. Training camp will be here before we know it. There's still players out there that remain unsigned that are, I still think, good NHL players. We saw Eric Stahl retire recently. We might see some guys go in on PTOs to camp. If you'll get a guy like James Van Riemsdyk remains unsigned, Tyson Barrie, Tony DeAngelo, Tyler Johnson, Kevin LeBanc, Mike Hoffman, Max Pacioretty, Justin Schultz, John Klingberg, former Leaf, Kevin Lankinen, goaltender, Nick Cousins, Stanley Cup champion, Antti Ranta, Cal Clutterbuck, Philip Zadina, Matt Martin. Some guys still available. We'll see if they can get deals going into training and have a chance to make a team. We'll continue to monitor that as the summer rolls on. But creative by St. Louis, and we'll touch on them next week, what the Edmonton Oilers decide to do moving forward. Let's go to the NFL. This past weekend, we saw a lot of impressive rookie performances. Number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, looked the part for the Chicago Bears. He showed his athleticism, showed his arm, his ability to throw on the move down the field. You had Jaden Daniels, who was only out there for one drive, but it was a touchdown drive, threw a beautiful ball down the field, had a rushing touchdown. He looked good to me, looked like the starting quarterback for the Commanders. Drake May, a little up and down for the Patriots. Didn't get a whole lot of snaps playing for a bad team in front of him, so that can be difficult. But it was more Joe Milton, who was picked later than Drake May, who's big arm, played at Michigan, played at Tennessee last year, had some impressive moments in his NFL preseason debut. Then you got the JJ McCarthy, taken by the Vikings, the replacement to Kirk Cousins, who they let walk in free agency. JJ McCarthy, who won a national championship at Michigan. JJ McCarthy, who was kind of looked at and go, what is this guy all about? They run the football. They play good defense. Is JJ really that good of a quarterback? Well, in his preseason debut, he played well. Sam Darnold opened the game, but he soon came out, and as I find his exact numbers for their win against the Las Vegas Raiders on Saturday afternoon, JJ McCarthy went 11 for 17, a buck 88, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception, 2 rushes for 18 yards. He had some really good moments. Sam Darnold had some good moments as well in his couple of drives for the Vikings. But to me, this job was very much a competition. You had Sam Darnold, who's been a backup quarterback for the last number of years, was formerly a number 3 overall pick by the New York Jets, but was then shipped aside to Carolina. Never worked out for him there. Then went to San Francisco, was the backup quarterback to Brock Purdy last year, and now is looking to become a starting quarterback for the first time in a while with the Vikings. Well, that competition really came to a close today because we learned that JJ McCarthy suffered a torn meniscus in his right knee. And when they went in for surgery to figure out the extent of the injury, it's serious. He's out for the remainder of the season, and his rookie season is over effective today. Means that Sam Darnold will be the starting quarterback in all likelihood for the Vikings in 2024, 2025. He does get an opportunity to prove that he is a starter again. And it's interesting because I feel for JJ because I think the Vikings, despite the fact that they're going to be the worst team in their own division, but their division is incredibly deep, incredibly difficult with the Packers and the Lions, who are a couple plays away from the Super Bowl last year, and the Bears, who I think are going to be a playoff team. He was going to get a chance to play. I think he would have played this year at some point for the Vikings. He would have got to play with the best wide receiver in football in Justin Jefferson. You got to play with Jordan Addison, who is incredibly gifted and had a great rookie year coming out of USC. TJ Hawkinson is a great tight end. Aaron Jones comes over from the Packers to the Vikings. Their offense is really interesting. Really deep, really talented, the Minnesota Vikings offense. So I would have liked to see him play it. Every year is different. Jalen Naylor, fun player who we had good connection with. TJ Hawkinson, Josh Oliver, Brandon Powell. Solid offensive line that's been together for a minute. It's just an unfortunate injury for JJ McCarthy. I think he'll be fine. He'll come back ready to go. He did not have an injury history at Michigan. Just seemed more of a fluke injury in that game because he was playing really well. He was controlling the offense. You saw players on the sideline fired up for him to have that type of success. But this pivots the thought process for the Vikings, for Kevin O'Connell, to it's about Sam Darnold now. Sam Darnold is your quarterback. Nick Mullins or Jaren Hall will be the backup quarterback. And you hope Sam still has something left in the tank. You hope that Sam realizes the opportunity that's in front of him for him to play good football, for him to have a pretty damn good team around him, to have the best wide receiver in football at his disposal. He's in a much better situation than he's been in a long time. Opportunity to play, no real competition behind him. It is his job now. 100%. And it's not like Carolina where they were devoid of talent. And you get thrown in there, and Matt Rule really didn't want to give him a chance, didn't want him to succeed all that much. Matt Rule was kind of waiting to get back to NCAA, to coach college football. That's what he's always been best at. Now he's at Nebraska. The NFC North might be, I think it's the most loaded division in football. NFC North, AFC North. And starting next week, we'll be doing division previews, and we're going to be doing 2 per episode. We'll start AFC East, NFC East. That's coming up next week. So get ready for that. Those will be fun. I love doing them, doing the research and that. But look, going through this, starting the process, AFC North, NFC North are just loaded with really good teams, a lot of talent, good quarterbacks. I mean, Sam Darnold's by far the worst quarterback in the division because there's some really good quarterbacks in this division. And Sam Darnold was taken number 3 overall at one point in time by the Jets. Really good quarterback in college. Really good. I think he can be successful. I still think he's got something in the tank to be successful. I don't think he's a bust. We'll see, though. No JJ McCarthy in year 1 for the Vikings. Unfortunate for him. I do think he would have played eventually throughout this year. I don't think he would have won the job straight out of camp. But he does have talent. He has some moxie in him. So unfortunate to see him go down before the season even really starts. I love seeing the rookie quarterbacks. That's why I watch the preseason. I want to see rookies. Seeing JJ McCarthy play. Seeing Brock Bowers play for the Raiders. Brock Bowers, who the Raiders really don't have a great quarterback. They have Gardner Minshew, who comes over from Indy. Aiden O'Connell, who's he played at Purdue. I look at their players. Brock Bowers only had 2 catches for 25 yards on Saturday, but they're using him in a lot of different creative ways. Out of the backfield, he might run the football this year. He's going to block. He's going to catch passes. Trey Tucker is a fun player for me for the Raiders. I like watching him. You have Jacoby Myers, who's always reliable when healthy. Jalen Guyton comes over from the Chargers. And Brock Bowers and Michael Mayer are going to be a tight end pairing. One from Georgia, one from Notre Dame. I'm intrigued to watch that. So it was fun seeing Brock Bowers play. As I mentioned, Caleb Williams was awesome in a 33-6 win over the Bills on set. The results of the game are irrelevant. Jordan Love looked great for the Packers. What was kind of interesting for me, San Francisco 49ers have Brock Purdy. And they like Brock Purdy a lot. They had Sam Darnold as their backup last year. Sam Darnold's better than what they have Josh Dobbs and they have Brandon Allen. 2 veterans of the league. Josh Dobbs, the Pastronaut, who's had his moments, but has fallen off a cliff as of late. And Brandon Allen, who has been on a lot of different teams. If you go through the last couple of years, Broncos, Bengals. He's been on the 49ers practice squad a bunch over the last couple of years as well. So I don't love their backup quarterback situation. If something happens with Brock Purdy of one of the best teams in the league, I'd want more security. I don't think they're going to get it because it's so close to the start of the season. But that was kind of alarming to me going, okay, what's happening if he goes down? I guess Josh Dobbs. Yikes. Spencer Rattler, former Oklahoma, South Carolina quarterback. He had some good moments in his NFL preseason debut. Jake Haener and Spencer Rattler look better than Derek Carr, quite frankly. Clayton Tune, Desmond Ridder, now in Arizona, battling it out for the backup quarterback job. So I like following all of that. There's also this story where the New York Jets are constantly in the news because Aaron Rodgers is their quarterback. And a lot of people don't like Aaron Rodgers for one reason or another. There's also a book coming out by Ian O'Connor in the next little while. It's called Out of the Darkness. I can't wait to read it because Ian's a great writer. He wrote a book called Belichick that was really, really good. He's just a really good writer. I think the book will be well done. But the Jets are always a headline. And Hassan Reddick, who has the second most sacks in the NFL over the last 4 years, was traded from the Eagles to the Jets in the offseason. The Eagles did this because they knew he had 1 year left on his deal. He would have wanted a new contract. He's 31 years old, which isn't ancient, but it's also, we got to start making decisions on him, and clearly the Eagles made the decision. We don't want to pay a 31-year-old pass rusher huge money. So he agreed to go to the Jets, and the way he's talked about his agent, they agreed that he would be traded to the Jets and they would then talk about a contract extension. Well, that hasn't happened. They haven't come close to a contract extension, and now Hassan Reddick has demanded a trade from the New York Jets. However, the Jets released a statement yesterday saying, we've informed Hassan, we are not going to trade him, and we value him as a Jet. We want him to be great for us this season. Fantastic. Now, will that work? I don't know. We're seeing this across the league. CeeDee Lamb is still not at Cowboys camp, and Jerry Jones makes it worse every time he says something. Jamar Chase has not practiced with the Bengals the last 2 days because he wants a new contract. Trent Williams has not been present for the San Francisco 49ers. Brandon Ayuk reportedly is a trade in place to ship him to the Pittsburgh Steelers, but the 49ers aren't doing it yet because they want to keep him. So that remains up in the air. But I don't know. This one is tough because I think what's going to have to happen is that Hassan Reddick just have to play on this deal. He might not like it, but if you don't play games, you get fined and you lose a pile of money. Quite frankly. And Hassan Reddick, really good pass rusher, was great for the Eagles, was on that team that got to the Super Bowl, was a big part of it. I think he had 21 sacks that year. It just, I don't think the Jets feel the need to sign him. They have a lot of money invested into a lot of different players. They're going to have to sign Sauce Gardner eventually. They're going to have to sign Garrett Wilson eventually. You don't want to kind of put yourself in a bind financially when you're looking at two guys that you hope to be on your team for a long time to come. So as much as I think he's a really good player, Hassan Reddick, and he'll help the Jets this season improve their defense, it was already a strength. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think he's going to get his money. I do think he'll show up and play because he has no other option, really. And I don't think they're going to trade him again. And is a team really going to trade him and sign for him this close to a start of a new season? They're going through training camp. They're playing their guys. They're going through the process of going, who do we want here? Who's making this team? Who can have an impact? A lot of teams would want Hassan Reddick, but I'm not so sure teams want to pay him what he's willing. They want to pay him for 1 year, get the value, and move on, which is what the Jets are going to do this year. And I think he's just going to have to accept it. A guy who was an NFL player and is now no longer an NFL player is Nathan Rourke, the 2022 CFL's most outstanding Canadian. He's had an interesting couple of years. Started out with the Jaguars, where he signed with himself. He was elevated to the active roster midway through last year when Trevor Lawrence went down with an injury. Was a backup quarterback for a game, and then was put back on the practice squad. When you're back on the practice squad, you go through waivers, and he was claimed by the New England Patriots. Patriots had him for the rest of the year. He was put on waivers earlier this summer. where he was claimed by the New York Giants. They had Daniel Jones, Drew Lock, Tommy DeVito in camp, and Dave Naylor of TSN reported he wasn't even getting any reps during practice. So they released him to see if there was other opportunities for him in training camp. He was signed by the Falcons, and he was then cut 10 days later, with the Falcons having Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix Jr., and Taylor Heineke at their disposal. So Nathan Rourke was once again a free agent. He could have tried to get back into a practice squad, get into a training camp roster with a couple weeks of training camp left. Instead, he opted to go back to Canada, and he signed the most lucrative deal in league history with the BC Lions, a team that owned his rights. He signed a 3-year deal. He'll be making $600,000 the next 3 seasons. He was fantastic the last time we saw him in the CFL. Could make the argument he should have won league MOP, but he started the year as the backup quarterback. The BC Lions are 5-4. Vernon Adams Jr., their quarterback, is currently injured, so it fits the need. And Nathan Rourke may start Sunday night when they play the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. So Nathan Rourke returns, just says goodbye to the NFL. He tried it, which credit to him. He tried to do it. He tried to get there. His brother is currently on the same. His brother is a college quarterback at Indiana. He's trying to become an NFL player. He possibly could be a future CFL star as well. But Nathan Rourke at 26, prime of his career, he will instantly become the best quarterback in the CFL, can return and play right away with a pretty solid team in BC that had high expectations to get to a Grey Cup this year, partly because they host it. I think this was the right decision. He tried Atlanta. It didn't work. They cut him right away. The Giants was horrible from the beginning, and I think he could have ended up somewhere, but you're playing the rest of the preseason. Are you going to get that many reps in games? And then you're possibly a free agent when this process is all over again, looking for work when training camps are over. He's guaranteed to start with the BC Lions. Rick Campbell already said, knowing Nathan, he'll be starting on Sunday. You get $600,000 per season in hard money. That's what your salary is going to be. More money than you would have made on an NFL practice squad. And you get to go play and show NFL teams, if you want, if that's your goal, that I am a good quarterback. I need the reps. I want to get better. I'm going to try to do this again in 2, possibly 3 years when I'm 28. That's not ancient. Warren Moon left the CFL after winning 5 Grey Cups to go to the NFL, and he's a Hall of Famer in both the CFL and the NFL. Doug Flutie. So possibly Nathan Rourke has a couple great years with the BC Lions. They have a ton of success, and he tries this again down the line. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. But you get to play. They want you in BC. You start, there's no competition. Go in, help this team win. Help us be competitive again. Help this team get to a Grey Cup. That'll show somebody something. And you get to play, you get to take reps in practice, which he was not getting at the NFL level. I think it's unfortunate because I think Nathan Rourke can be a backup, can be a third stringer in the NFL. But I do think the NFL does have a bias when it comes to CFL players coming. I don't think they particularly like them. The game doesn't translate as well, and they can have that bias going in. Austin Mack, who was the best receiver in the CFL last year, was a huge part of the Montreal Alouettes winning the Grey Cup, was released by the same Atlanta Falcons on Tuesday, so he's currently a free agent. I'm curious to see if he decides to return north of the border to rejoin the Alouettes, who are the best team in the CFL and are very much on the road to getting back to a Grey Cup in 2024. Nathan Rourke, really, I wish he would have stayed in Jacksonville because I think that would have been a better thing for him. But unfortunately, when you're elevated and they want to drop you down because they don't want to keep 3 quarterbacks on their roster, anybody's free to pick you up, and the Patriots did. And although currently Jacksonville will be tough because you have Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, and CJ Beathard all there. CJ Beathard could be in the position that Nathan Rourke was in last year, being a practice squad quarterback. Just the way the cookie crumbles. But he gets to join the CFL, compete, try to win a Grey Cup. Home stretch of the season, August to November, play in the playoffs. I'm happy for Nathan that he gets to play and he seems content with this decision. He was supposed to meet with the media today. I haven't seen anything yet, but although it is BC, so it's a number of hours behind. So he might be meeting with the media later on. Other CFL news. Jeremiah Masoli, former MOP nominee, was a great quarterback with the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Was a pretty solid quarterback for a period of time with the Ottawa Red Blacks. Has been going through a lot of injury, just crap. 2 years ago, tore his ACL. Out for the season, comes back, first game back healthy, blows out his Achilles. That was last year. He fought hard in the offseason to get healthy. The Red Blacks kept him on the roster. And he was their third quarterback going into this season. But with an injury to starting quarterback Drew Brown, Dustin Crum playing inadequate in relief last week, Bob Dice, the head coach, says Jeremiah Masoli will start this week. And it's a great moment for Jeremiah to get this opportunity to play again, to get this opportunity to get back into the CFL. Worked those injuries, he worked extremely hard to come back from them. And he will suit up tomorrow night in Calgary, as the Red Blacks have been one of the more surprising teams in the CFL. They are 5-2-1 on the season, coming off a tie against Saskatchewan last week. But Masoli gets the start, gets a great opportunity. Another showcase moment for him just to say, hey, you know what? I'm back. I can play with anybody. I am still a very good quarterback. If my body's healthy, I can do it. We've seen older quarterbacks kind of moving on. Bo Levi Mitchell was benched last week by the Hamilton Tiger Cats. Taylor Powell will start this week. I'm not sure we ever see Bo Levi Mitchell start a game in the CFL again. Seems like Father Time has caught up to him. Injuries, inconsistencies continue to kind of bring him down. It's unfortunate because he's one of the league's all-time greats, coming over from Texas, playing as well as he has. I think he can be an analyst for the league if he wants, because he's great. He's always on TV for the Grey Cup. He's fantastic in that role. But you're seeing some shifts. You're seeing Nathan Rourke come back. You're seeing Jeremiah Masoli get back under center. Also today, let's see, I saw news. I think the BC Lions made some roster moves today. They cut 2 quarterbacks off the roster with Nathan Rourke arriving. And as I load this up here, yeah, they cut both Joey Delgado and Armstrong, 2 quarterbacks currently on their roster. with Nathan Rourke coming back. Doligala started last week for the BC Lions. So they're not afraid to kind of shake things up. They want to be a winner. They expect to be a winner this year. Brennan Armstrong, Jake Doligala gone. And they said that Vernon Adams Jr. will not be traded, which is a bit surprising. I understand it from the teams, but I don't think Vernon will be happy being a backup the rest of the year because he's one of the better quarterbacks in the league. I think teams around the league would call on him. If the Argonauts are the Argonauts going to get Chad Kelly back, I think they'd be interested. Hamilton, I'm sure, would be interested because they really don't have a starting quarterback right now. Montreal is fine. Cody Fajardo is great. Stampeders, yes, they're both in the Western Division, and Jake Meyer's not a bad quarterback. I think VA's better. Winnipeg's 3-6 with Zach Collaros, but that's been a bit up and down. Saskatchewan sounds like they're going to get Trevor Harris back this week in time for their game on Friday night against Montreal. He's been out for a minute with injuries. He's an aging kind of veteran quarterback. So I think there would be landing spots for him. But we shall see. CFL gets interesting. Lots of things happening with the league. I think it's been a successful. There's been games. I like what they're doing when they're scheduled. They have a game Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday every week until the NFL starts. I think that's smart. They're not too late at night, so you can watch it 8 o'clock. I've been enjoying that about the CFL schedule. I think it's smart the way they do that. So I'm curious. Sunday night, Nathan Rourke will make his return to the CFL against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and oddly enough, that was the last team he played before he left. He lost in the Western Division Championship game. He plays them at home Sunday night. So that'll be must-watch TV for me anyway on Sunday to see how Nathan Rourke looks in his return to the CFL. Baseball, the National League West, the division, is on a tear. San Diego Padres have won 18 of the last 21 games. And yet they're 3.5 games out of first place, which is pretty crazy. The Diamondbacks have won 13 of the last 17. They're going to win another game today as they currently lead 11-3 against the Colorado Rockies in the top of the 8th inning. But Jock Peterson, Lourdes Gurriel, Josh Bell, since arriving in Arizona, has been awesome. Padres, they're winning 8-1. Bottom 8th against the Pittsburgh Pirates. The Pirates are about to lose their 10th straight game. Woof. So that Paul Skeens magic has really gone away. You're looking at the Padres. Jake Jerkson, Profar, Luis Arias batting over 300. Jackson Merrill's really come alive. David Peralta, good pickup. Tyler Wade, bottom of their lineup. They're playing great baseball. They're a team to watch. I've said this before. I think they're the second best team in the National League behind the Phillies. And the Phillies haven't played well since the All-Star game, really. Phillies 69-50. Padres will be 69-53 with a win today. So will the Diamondbacks. So Phillies have some games in hand. But both those teams are dangerous. Both those teams are really good. Top of the Diamondbacks and Padres both have a 4-game lead over the Atlanta Braves in the wild card hunt right now as they both try to chase down the LA Dodgers, who lead baseball with 71 wins. Dodgers have won back-to-back over the Milwaukee Brewers. Ohtani homering in both games. Mookie Betts returning with a 2-run shot. They're dangerous. I still worry about their pitching when it comes down to I think the Diamondbacks or the Padres can beat them in a series. I have that much respect for their pitching and what they've accomplished over the last number of years, and it's been better in the postseason than the Dodgers, quite frankly. You look around San Francisco, the Mets, Cardinals, Cincinnati Reds, who have won 2 straight over the Cardinals. all remain still in the mix for the wild card, still hunting for it in the National League. You got Red Sox, game and a half out of the final wild card spot in the American League. Mariners 2.5 out. They played better baseball as of late, but unfortunately for them, the Astros are another team that just can't be stopped right now. They have won 7 straight. They won again at the Trop. They finished their series against Tampa tonight. Then they get to play the Chicago White Sox this weekend, which is a series you want every time before they play the Red Sox. And then they have the Orioles for 4, Phillies, Royals. So they have tough schedule, but they're making up. When they're playing their bad teams, they're beating them right now, while the Detroit Tigers beat the Mariners 15-3 last night. It might have been 15-1. It was bad. 15-1, Tigers beat the Mariners last night in Detroit. So it's up in the air. You see the Guardians, who are all of a sudden playing good baseball again, because they got to stay ahead of the Twins and the Royals, who are both good teams that can make you pay. Yankees, Juan Soto with a 3-home run game last night for the first time in his career. Awesome stuff against the White Sox. To me, right now, you're seeing Orioles, Yankees, Phillies, Seattle, Guardians to an extent, Milwaukee, teams that were awesome through the first 2/3 of the season, really haven't been since July. And teams that struggled, Houston, Arizona, San Diego, slow starts to the season, have been phenomenal since before the All-Star break and post All-Star break. They can't be stopped right now. That will even itself out with tougher schedules, and you run into September and crazy things can happen. Diamondbacks are without Ketel Marte. They might miss Zach Gallen for a couple starts, so that can hurt you. But I'm curious to see down the stretch who finishes with the best record. Who will have home field throughout the National League, throughout the American League playoffs, because it's very much up in the air. Guardians and Yankees both with 71 wins on August 14th. Astros with 64. You have the Orioles who have 70. So not far behind. National League Dodgers with 71. Phillies with 69. Milwaukee with 67. So they potentially could grab the second seed from the Phillies if they can find their game a little bit. They have the Dodgers again tonight and tomorrow afternoon. Jack Flaherty on the mound for the Dodgers. So a 4-game set in Milwaukee. Tough one so far for the Brewers because they haven't really been involved in either of the games. The White Sox tracker continues. They beat the New York Yankees earlier this week to get to 29 wins. They're now 29-92. They finished their series with the Yankees this evening. As I said, then they go to Houston for 3, at San Francisco for 3, and they get to play the Tigers, who stink, just like them. The Rangers stink as well. The Rangers have lost 7 in a row. They're completely out of the playoff race. But that was embarrassing. I mean, that's how bad this team was. It was kind of headline news even on ESPN for baseball that the Yankees lost to the White Sox. And they didn't just lose. They got smoked in that game. But they hope to win that series tonight on the south side of Chicago. So that's the MLB update. This weekend, FedEx Cup playoffs begins. First of 3 legs, you have the FedEx St. Jude Championship. Top 70 players of the FedEx Cup season get to battle it out. 70 this week, drops to 50 next week, and then 30 for the Tour Championship. I find the setup goofy in the last. I hate with the points. You have to make it up. I think that's shit when they do the Tour Championship at East Lake. But I like that you go from 70 to 50 to 30. You battle it out. looking at tomorrow some groups to follow, and it's based on how you're doing, basically, and how successful you've been. Because you got Shoffley, Scheffler playing together, Maverick McNeely, Taylor Moore playing together, Patrick Cantlay, Tony Finau with Russell Henley, Corey Connors, Sam Burns, nice little group, Max Homa, JT Poston, Nick Taylor, the Canadian pair with Harris English, Victor Hovland, Eric Van Rooyen of South Africa, Colin Morikawa and Rory McIlroy, Wyndham Clark, Ludwig Aberg, Shane Lowry, Sungjae Im, Justin Thomas, Brian Harmon, Taylor Pendrith, Chris Kirk. Pendrith, Mac Hughes will need good weekends to advance inside the top 50. They'll need to play well. Last year, Lucas Glover won this event. He's not in the field because he did not qualify for the top 6, so we'll have a new champion here. But it's basically about getting to the Tour Championship at East Lake, and if you win the Tour Championship at East Lake, you win $15 million, the biggest prize on the PGA Tour all season long. So that'll be fun to watch this weekend. We'll recap it on Sunday when we next speak. Also this weekend, UFC 305, Perth, Western Australia, headlined by a grudge match between current middleweight champion Dricus du Plessis and former middleweight champion Israel Adesanya. These two were supposed to fight last September, but Dricus had to pull out of the fight because he was injured. Sean Strickland stepped in, and Sean Strickland defeated, in one of the biggest upsets in UFC history, defeating Israel Adesanya. Sean Strickland then fought Dricus in December. Very close fight. Could have went either way. Dana White thought Sean Strickland won the fight. They gave it to Dricus. He became middleweight champion of the world in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So now we know that Sean Strickland gets the winner. Dana White confirmed that yesterday on the Jim Rome show. But these two men hate each other. It's about African pride. It's about kind of racial undertones. It's a nasty piece of business between these two guys. You have Izzy, who's trying to become he's the first person ever to win a title 3 times in the same weight division, become middleweight champion of the world on 3 different occasions. He's also, Izzy's fought for a belt in 12 straight years, which is pretty incredible, which is 3rd all time. Dricus can get you to the ground and get you with ground and pound if you want to do. He did that to the Reaper, Robert Whittaker. Izzy is a kickboxer. He's going to want to strike with you. He's going to want to use kicks, use his long range, what makes him so difficult to figure out. Neither of these guys really get knocked out that often. Izzy got knocked out from Pereira, but he was still on his feet, and it was more of a mercy stoppage more than he got knocked out. He lost to Jan Blachowicz, but Blachowicz took him to the ground for 3 straight rounds and kind of controlled him there. Izzy doesn't get finished. Dricus doesn't get finished. Hasn't lost since he got to the UFC. Israel is a slight favorite, minus 122. You can get Dricus at minus 104. It is a pick'em if there ever was one. I can't wait to watch this style matchup because Dricus makes you seem small in the cage because he is such a big dude. And he can wear you out, and he can get on your arms and make it difficult for you to get any kind of momentum. I think Israel Adesanya is going to win on Saturday. And despite the fact that Dricus doesn't get stopped, and to his credit, he doesn't really, in his fight against Strickland, he wasn't the one that got tired. Strickland got tired, even though that Strickland won the 5th round. 2nd through 4th rounds, Dricus had more energy, had more to go, and he took a beating against Strickland, but he still won. even to me, and I like Sean Strickland. I think Israel's going to knock out Dricus du Plessis on Saturday night. I think he's going to finish him. He's going to make his mark. He already is, but kind of tell everybody again that he's one of the best middleweights of all time. You can make the argument he's the greatest middleweight fighter in UFC history, even better than the great Spider, Anderson Silva. Him against Sean Strickland, the rematch is great. Easy sell. They fought before. Everybody says it's a fluke. Can Sean Strickland do it again? Is he the kryptonite to Israel Adesanya? I expect this to be a war. I don't think this is a first-round knockout type fight. Both these guys will take some time to figure each other out. I'm going to say a fourth-round finish for Israel Adesanya to become the new middleweight champion of the world. Show everybody that he's not too old. Show everybody that he is still very much game. Still very much one of the best. And hand Dricus his first loss in the UFC. But if Dricus wins on Saturday, he will have gone through Robert Whittaker, former champion, Sean Strickland, former champion, and Israel Adesanya, multiple-time champion in the UFC. An incredible start to his middleweight reign. And he's a dangerous fighter. He's really good. Really good. I expect it to be an awesome fight, and I can't wait to watch it. Co-main event. The return of Kai Kara-France, who has not fought since he fought Amir Albazi at the Apex. He's dealt with multiple concussions since that fight, and he won that fight. He got jobbed in that fight. He beat Amir Albazi, but the judges screwed him. And since then, he was supposed to fight Manel Kape. That never happened. Dealing with injuries, dealing with some stuff. He finally returns. He's from New Zealand, so not that far of a trek for him to fight in Perth. He's part of the city kickboxing team with Israel Adesanya. Eugene Behrman is also his head coach. So him and Israel are tight. They're teammates. He gets to fight Steve Erceg, who fought for the flyweight title in May, went 5 rounds with Alejandro Pantoja, was an awesome fight. I think he lost 3 rounds to 2, but he was game. He landed some big shots. Steve Erceg's a tough son of a bitch, Astro Boy. And I expect this is another really fun fight. 2 guys that don't really go to the ground. These 2 guys are strikers. 2 guys I think know very well. The flyweight division is completely up in the air. Pantoja's kind of beaten everybody, including Kai Kara-France and Steve Erceg. But you have Muhammad Mahayev, who's now gone from the UFC because he was more pain than he was worth. Brandon Royval, who has lost multiple times to Pantoja. They like Tesura Tyra, who's still undefeated. I think if he wins his next fight, will be number 1 contender. But either one of these 2 guys with a great performance could be next in line because I think flyweight is that wide open. There's no set contender. There's no obvious name to be like, okay, that's the next guy for Alejandro Pantoja. To me, it's just about the best matchup because he's beaten pretty much everybody in the division. Moreno's no longer in the division. He's beaten Moreno 3 times. I'm curious to see how Kai looks. He has not fought, just to make it completely, I think it might have been last September as well. It was a long time ago. He last fought June of 2023, lost to Amir Albazi at the Apex. Part of that, he also lost to Brandon Moreno. So he's on a 2-fight losing streak, Kai Kara-France. But he can punch. He knocked out Cody Garbrandt pretty nasty a few years back. Steve Erceg's the favorite, -180, +1 for another really close odds here. I'm going with Steve Erceg because I just think he's such a tight boxer. Good kickboxing, not quite as dynamic as Kai Kara-France, but he sticks to the game plan. Strong puncher for a guy that's 125 pounds. I have Steve Erceg, the Astro Boy, getting back in the win column after his loss for the title. Third fight in the card, Matthias Gamrot versus Dan Hooker at the lightweight division. Dan Hooker's from Australia. He wanted to be on this card. He's part of the team with Izzy, another one of his boys. Gamrot is as solid a wrestler as there is in the UFC, period. Only has 2 losses in his UFC career, Matthias Gamrot. He trains with Dustin Poirier at American Top Team, has defeated Jalen Turner, knocked out Rafael Fiziev. His losses are to Beneil Dariush, and I believe he won that fight. He's got a win over Arman Sakarian, and his only other loss in the UFC was to Guram Katalze, but that was back in 2020 via decision. He's improved every time out. Defeated RDA back in March. Defeated Gazia, defeated Jalen Turner. I think he beat Beneil Dariush, defeated Arman Sakarian, who's number 1 contender for the lightweight title. He's as good a wrestler as Charles Oliveira, as good a wrestler as, you could argue, as Islam Makhachev. That's his strength. Get you to the ground, beat you there. Dan Hooker, he's a dog. His last fight out, he beat Jalen Turner. It was a war. He broke his arm in that fight. We haven't seen him since. But Dan Hooker at 23-12 has had his ups and downs. 2023 was a good year. Beat Jalen Turner. 2022, beat Claudio Puelles, lost to Arnold Allen in the first round. But that was at featherweight. He's now back up to lightweight. Lost to Islam in there. Lost to Michael Chandler in his UFC debut. Had a war against Dustin Poirier. Defeated Paul Felder. He's been in the UFC since 2014. So a decade with the UFC for Dan Hooker at 34 years old. Huge opportunity for him. He's a pretty sizable underdog. You can get him at plus 250. He's got a puncher's chance. If he can stay off the mat, I think Gamrot's just too talented, too technical a lightweight. I have Gamrot winning this fight. I have the first 3 fights on the card, the favorites winning. We then have heavyweights, 2 guys that people both like. Tai Tuivasa, who's from Australia, who's kind of on a Tony Ferguson run right now, and that's losing. He was on a roll, and now he's not. 15-7. Lost to Marcin Tybura back in March. Lost to Volkov last year. Lost to Pavlovich in 54 seconds. Lost to Cyril Gahn. His last win was in February of 2022 against Derek Lewis. He gets Jairzinho Rozenstruik, a.k.a. Biggie Boy. Jairzinho last fought in March, beat Shamil Gaziev, handed him his first pro loss. He was kind of on a stretch too. He lost to Jailton Almeida, beat Chris Daukaus, lost to Alexander Volkov in the first round. Lost to Curtis Blades, lost to Cyril Gahn, lost to Francis Ngannou in 20 seconds, which was his first pro loss where he just got near killed in that fight. He's got wins over Alistair Overeem. He's got wins against Andrei Arlovsky, former champion. So, both former champions. This is a striker's fight. 2 guys that like to knock each other out. I would hammer the finish in this fight. One of these guys is knocking out the other. Jairzinho minus 245, Tai Tuivasa at plus 186. He's the favorite every time he steps in the octagon because he does the shoey. He comes out to interesting music, but he is very much a striker, and that is it. This is a good matchup for him if he's going to get a victory. I'm going to take Jairzinho, though. I just think he's a little more technical. He's used to different style of fights. If it goes a certain way, I think he knocks out Tai Tuivasa on Saturday night. You also have the return to the Leech, Li Yingling against Carlos Prats, who Carlos is, since winning Dana White Contender Series, which started last night and was awesome, he's 2-0 in the UFC. Both finishes. He's actually on a 5-fight finish streak. Leech is tough. Not an elite fighter, but he's tough in the sense that he's not easy to put away. He's another guy that was out with an injury for a long period of time. 36, he's not fought since September of 2022 when he lost to Daniel Rodriguez. The Leech was subbed by Chimaev, but that's Neil Magny lost via decision. 2018 decision losses. He doesn't get finished. It's extremely hard to finish him. He's a tough guy. Carlos is a guy that he gets out there 19-6 as a pro. Knocked out Carlos Radke in the first round. Knocked out Trevin Giles in the second round since coming over from the Contender Series. I think he wins again. He's a sizable favorite at minus 320. If you look, Contender Series, second round knockout of Mitch Ramirez. First round KO via knee against Eduardo Ramon and LFA. The last decision win was in December of 2019 for Carlos. So just something to think about. He's a dangerous fighter. The Leech is tough. Should be fun, but I think Carlos will get the win. Junior Tafa against Walter Walker. Walker's first fight with the UFC. Junior Tafa, another guy from Australia. Minus 130. You can go either way. Two big strikers, heavyweights. Josh Culibao against Ricardo Ramos. Culibao, another Australian. I think he'll get the win. Casey O'Neill against Luana Santos. Casey O'Neill has lost 2 in a row. Was viewed as a top prospect of any woman in the UFC. But now she's an underdog going into this fight. I think she loses. You also have Herbert Burns, Jack Jenkins. Jack Jenkins returning from Australia. Biggest favorite on the card at minus 770 against Gilbert Burns' brother, Herbert. There's some local talent. I do think it's a good card. You have the Spear card coming up in a month today. But this should be fun this weekend. UFC 305 in Perth, Australia. You got the golf, the first of 3 legs of the FedEx Cup playoffs. Major League Baseball ongoing. NFL preseason. We'll be tracking it all, and we'll recap it on Sunday when we chat again. Thank you guys for tuning in tonight. Thank you for the continued support as always. Until next time, I'm Noah Warren, and this is To The Point.